Good day, gentlemen. Dirk here on the MGTOW solution. I'm going to cover two topics today, both related to the field of psychology. First, I'll take a look at Abraham Maslow's famous hierarchy of needs theory. Most of you are probably familiar with this, but I'm going to point a little red pill lens at the theory and see how it might apply to men going their own way. Then, I'm going to repost a section about Briffault's law, which I covered in Chapter 3, Accepting Reality. If you've seen that, this will be familiar, so you might want to skip it. Then again, it might be worth a second look. I'm recycling that content here because it's important for men to be familiar with Briffault's law, whether they've been through my book chapters or not. But let's start with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which was published in 1943. It provides a useful model for human behavior and has some interesting implications within the context of MGTOW. The basic concept is that behavior is driven by the satisfaction of needs, and that higher-order needs won't be pursued until lower-order needs have been fulfilled. If you're hungry, that takes precedence over pretty much everything. From what I've observed, living in the blue-pilled world makes it much more difficult to satisfy all of these needs in your own life, because so much time and effort is put into satisfying someone else's needs. In fact, men are routinely exploited as the quickest means for women to move up the hierarchy. Here's a synopsis of Maslow's theory, along with some red pill perspective. Survival needs. The model is presented as a pyramid, with survival needs forming the base, your basic food, shelter, and clothing. Only when these needs are met can one expect to move up. If you're a man, survival needs are easily met through employment, which is generally your only choice. Women have two choices, work or marriage. Of course, many women work for a while, but not nearly as long as men do, and often only until marriage or pregnancy. In fact, marriage is usually the solution for women who don't like work, assuming the chosen man is a good provider. Then, you get to take care of her survival needs and yours. Women like this arrangement, hence hypergamy. Safety and security needs. Next up on the pyramid are safety and security, which basically comes down to knowing that your survival needs will continue to be met in the future. Once you have a job ensuring your immediate survival, you'll focus your efforts on keeping that job. For most women, marriage plays a major role in satisfying their safety security needs. With a man, she'll gain physical protection from assault, someone to deal with any dangerous situations that may arise, someone to do difficult work, and above all, guaranteed resources. The problem for men is that in the event of divorce, our safety security needs become secondary to the welfare of the woman. Only her well-being is considered by the courts. The man's role is to continue providing resources for a period of time commensurate with the length of the marriage. In many cases, he'll be required to contribute to her welfare for the rest of his life. This has an obvious negative impact on the man's safety and security needs, and in some cases, his survival needs. This is dismissed as irrelevant by both women and the courts. MGTOW aren't subjected to such exploitation because we don't get married. It's as simple as that. A man's safety and security needs are far better maintained by staying single, thus ensuring he is shielded from divorce rape. With his hard work contributing entirely to his own survival, safety, and security needs, he's in a better position to continue up the hierarchy. Social/emotional needs. This is often described as the need to be loved, which drives many men to marriage in the first place. They have the mistaken belief that women love men in the same way that men love women, but they don't. Women love men for the utility and resources they provide, for their ability to meet the woman's material needs. Think that's overly pessimistic? Consider what happens when successful men are laid off and don't immediately recover. or whose businesses fail, leaving the man broke. They usually end up alone. Rare is the woman who will stick by her man in hard times beyond a very short period. Most will monkey branch at the first opportunity. So what's a man to do? After all, we have a need for social connection, emotional validation, and love. Well, get it from people who don't require you to trade a lifetime of work in return for the conditional, artificial, practiced love offered by women with ulterior motives, namely, getting you to take care of them with a legal guarantee that you'll do so for your entire life. Family and friends come to mind. We've already seen how men's friends are quickly displaced following marriage, but the same thing usually happens with their families because her family takes precedence. If you were able to devote even 10% of the time that wives typically demand to your relationships with your family and friends, then you'd probably have a solid support system, one that doesn't put all your eggs in one basket. Women don't like this because then you aren't as dependent on them for emotional support. You'll be much more available to the people important to you if you stay single. This may not be the same as the idealized romantic love that people strive for, but those days are pretty much over. In short, your social needs and emotional support are better received from people who truly care about you as a human being, as opposed to people who view you as little more than a worker. That said, if you find a woman that you believe truly loves you, let her prove it by not marrying you and staying in the relationship with you anyway. Don't live with her either. Propose a long-term relationship based upon trust and love with separate homes. After all, if she really loves you, she'll understand and will happily accept such an arrangement in order to be with you and make you happy. Good luck with that. If she turns you down, she's proven that she's really more interested in locking in your resources than actually being with you. Call it a shit test, but hey, we're talking about your life. As for sexual needs, those can be met without marriage or cohabitation. Esteem needs. This level and up is where MGTOW really shines. When you live in the blue pill world, you rarely get to these levels. You're too busy catering to the needs of your woman, your boss, your kids, your creditors, and everyone else who is relying on you to be the stable and reliable worker. You simply don't have time for such trivial pursuits as satisfying your own needs for growth and self-development. Most men want to feel useful and productive. Society recognizes this and capitalizes on it. The problem is one of magnitude. As women's needs start small but continuously grow, so too does society's expectations on men to work hard, pay taxes, and sacrifice. What begins as a system where a hard day's work is appreciated becomes one where the man continuously falls short. Great job, and here's how you can do even better. It's mission creep. Ultimately, work ceases to be rewarding and so contributes nothing to your self-esteem. You become trapped in the rat race with no end in sight. Other activities that would satisfy your esteem needs, such as playing sports, are extremely limited due to lack of time. Meanwhile, the female has plenty of time to attend to her esteem needs, even if they're limited to keeping up with the latest celebrity gossip or shopping for clothes. When you're not playing that game, you're free to actually do what is important to you, whether it's finishing a degree, moving to a state you'd like to live in, or learning kung fu. Self-actualization needs. Here, Maslow was driving at the fulfillment of your purpose in life, realizing your full human potential. A lot of people never get there, either due to life circumstances or simple lack of ambition. Then again, if a person believes their purpose in life is watching TV, who am I to judge? Long-term goals are in this category, both professional and personal. But it doesn't have to be about achievement. It could be simply doing something you feel is important, donating blood or volunteering with a church group, for example. So what does all this mean for a man? Basically, it means that if you let your life revolve around a woman, then your progress up the hierarchy will be greatly limited, while hers will be greatly accelerated, at your expense. Consider an example of a woman marrying a man capable of supporting her and future children. From her perspective, survival needs, met, he's paying the bills. Safety security needs, met, he'll continue paying the bills even if she leaves him. Social emotional needs, met, he'll likely treat her as valuable because she controls his vagina access. She'll also maintain all of her relationships with her family and friends. Esteem needs, met. She'll have sufficient time to pursue whatever interests her. Self-actualization needs, met. For many women, motherhood is the primary self-actualization motivator, and this is possible due to the efforts of her man. If motherhood isn't the goal, she can focus on whatever she likes, indefinitely. Continuing the example, this time from the typical man's perspective. Survival needs, met through his own efforts. Safety security needs, met provided he continues working hard. Social emotional needs, probably met in the beginning, but eroding quickly as the woman isolates him from family and friends and begins rationing sex. Esteem needs, far less likely to be met than in the case of the woman because he's too busy working. Self-actualization needs, rarely met as most effort is directed at meeting others' needs. An exception may be the man who experiences fulfillment by making his woman happy. In other words, a self-actualized simp. Finally, here's how it works for MGTOW. Survival needs, met through his own efforts. Safety security needs, met provided he continues working hard, though he won't need to work as hard as the married man. If he chooses to work harder, then his progress up the hierarchy will be accelerated because his efforts actually benefit him. Social emotional needs, met through relationships with all of the people who don't insist on being his wife and monopolizing his time. Esteem needs, much more easily met due to the increased availability of both time and money. Self-actualization needs, again, much more easily met due to the increased availability of both time and money. In addition, the absence of a judgmental, manipulative woman brings considerable peace to a man's life. He is thus better able to reflect on what is truly important to him and free to pursue a path that brings him meaning. The bottom line is that you are far more likely to reach the self-actualization stage if you're single than if you're married. Unless you're one of those rare men in a long-term happy marriage with a unicorn, your self-development will always be secondary to hers. But even with the perfect woman, your future is in her hands. If she decides to monkey branch, you'll be mired in survival mode for years while she continues moving up, and you'll likely be ordered by the courts to help her do so. And she can pull that trigger whenever she likes. Choose wisely, gentlemen. Now let's move on to Briffault's law. Here's the section from the previous video. While much of MGTOW philosophy is considered new, we can look back in history for examples of similar thinking long before the information age. A prime example is Briffault's law, because Dr. Briffault appears to have taken the red pill decades before it was even conceptualized. Some may disagree with his theory, but you can't say it isn't interesting. By the way, you spell that name Briffault. Dr. Robert Briffault, 1876 to 1948, was an English surgeon, anthropologist, and author. His ideas are highly relevant to MGTOW and so worth consideration here. Briffault's law states, quote, "The female, not the male, determines all the conditions of the animal family. Where the female can derive no benefit from association with the male, no such association takes place." End quote. In other words, women do not love men unconditionally. They will enter into relationships with men when such relationships are beneficial. This should come as no surprise, but I would add that the female must not only benefit, but benefit to a sufficient degree in her mind. All else being equal, who's she going to choose? The guy earning $40K or the guy earning $150K? Even if all else isn't equal and the guy with the bigger paycheck is kind of an asshole, she'll still choose him. This also partly explains why wealthy men often get away with being assholes. They still get women. There are 3 corollaries to Briffault's law, which we'll look at one at a time. Corollary 1. Quote, "Even though a woman has accrued past benefits from her relationship with a man, this is no guarantee of her continuing the relationship with him." End quote. This translates into, "What have you done for me lately?" This is a distinctly female question, by the way. It's very easy to imagine a female asking it, but not a male. It has always baffled me the way women in my life seem to forget all the good things that I did for them. You can buy them houses and cars, make career sacrifices, give them countless hours of your time, and it's all quickly forgotten. It doesn't usually work that way with men. For example, if you help a buddy out with some project, it's automatically accepted that he'll step up in the future should you need help with something. It's not so much that he owes you, it's just that this is the correct way to behave as a civilized human being. You don't hold it over the guy's head, but he'll remember that you did him a solid. It's just a basic spirit of cooperation, or doing the right thing. Women's minds simply don't work this way. Hence, you can work for years providing resources to a woman, but you're not actually making deposits into what Stephen Covey refers to as her emotional bank account. As far as she's concerned, you're simply doing what's expected and nothing more. Once your good deeds are in the past, they no longer matter. This explains why women are so often dissatisfied with life in general and with their men in particular. They have no gratitude. If you've been married for 20 years, whatever sacrifices you made in the first decade are completely irrelevant. Ironically, if you fucked anything up in the same time frame, those things will most definitely never be forgotten. This represents a lack of loyalty on the part of women and explains why they are capable of such cruelty during a divorce. They literally don't remember all of the things you did right. All they see is whatever perceived shortcomings you have. At the same time, men do remember the good things, which is what makes divorce more painful for men. They are often genuinely sad to be losing the woman they fell in love with, and perplexed to see her morph into a selfish, spiteful bitch, intent on harming him as much as she can. How is it that women are capable of transforming from unicorns into raging bitches from hell? Guys have been trying to figure that one out for a long time, but this theory provides a possible explanation. They don't have the same moral compass as men. Remembering your positive actions and attributes does not serve her purpose, so those things are dismissed. This may be a little hard to understand if you're a man, because our brains aren't wired that way. But you have to admit, it explains a lot. Corollary 2. Quote, "If a woman promises a man to continue her relationship with him in the future in exchange for a benefit received from him today, her promise becomes null and void as soon as the benefit is rendered." End quote. By way of example, I interpret this to mean that a woman may pledge to be faithful to a man if he agrees to marry her, but once he does so, she is no longer obligated to be faithful, which may explain why women feel justified in cheating. They simply don't believe they owe it to him to be faithful because his end of the deal has already been met. It's history. I can hear it now. But men cheat too. Okay, screeching harpy, that's true, but for entirely different reasons. I would venture to guess that most men cheat out of sexual frustration because they aren't getting sex at home. This is actually the opposite of Corollary 2. To clarify, let's flip things around a bit. Suppose the benefit being rendered to the man is sex. Corollary 2 states that the promise, being faithful to her, becomes null and void once the benefit of sex is rendered. For the corollary to fit, it would require the woman to provide adequate sex and then for the man to cheat anyway. Those aren't usually the conditions when a man cheats on his wife. So the men cheat too argument isn't valid in this context. To clarify, when the wife cheats, it's because the man has provided her with the benefit, marriage. This is Briffault's law. When the husband cheats, it's because the wife hasn't provided him with the benefit, sex. Thus, this is not Briffault's law. Note that the cheating in both cases is the result of the woman's behavior. Of course, there are exceptions, but men with healthy sex lives at home are probably less likely to stray than men who are ignored sexually, often for years. Corollary 2 also explains why women feel no remorse when monkey branching. If you have fulfilled all of your obligations to her, including providing the material goods that she expected from the beginning, that doesn't compel her to stay with you. Everything that you provided just makes you even. She owes you nothing. So if a better guy comes along that she can latch onto, chances are better than average that she'll do it. You could also apply this to sex, in that women will provide lots of sex in the beginning of a relationship, implying that this will continue to be the norm as long as the man makes a commitment to her. As virtually all married men know, once that commitment is made, she will no longer feel obligated to continue providing sex with the same frequency. The promise of sex, to you, is rendered null and void because the benefit, to her, of marrying her has already been rendered. The issue seems to be that women fail to grasp a concept that most men readily understand: honor. They simply don't have any, and so hypergamy reigns. The very word honor immediately conjures up images of men. Think of a woman who exemplifies honor. Go ahead, I'll wait. Fictional women don't count. Not easy, is it? Corollary 3. Quote, a man's promise of a future benefit has limited ability to secure a continuing relationship with a woman, and his promise carries weight with her only to the extent that the woman's wait for the benefit is short and to the extent that she trusts him to keep his promise. End quote. An example that comes to mind is from the old movie An Officer and a Gentleman. In this film, two girlfriends are trying to land naval aviators as they go through their initial training. Pun unintended. The idea is that the men will go on to become successful officers and so provide many benefits to the women. Spoiler alert, one of the women was desperately trying to get a proposal out of her victim and even tried unsuccessfully to sperm jack him. The guy dropped from the training for some kind of medical reason. He then finally proposed to her, explaining that he has a solid plan. They can move back to his hometown where he has secured some kind of retail management job. She declines his proposal because that isn't what she signed up for. The guy is crushed because he thought she loved him. Turns out he was just the utility that she was counting on to provide the lifestyle she wanted. The bitch didn't even hesitate or think about it. She immediately dumped him. The former officer candidate ultimately committed suicide. This is an important thing for the young guys to understand. If you're in a relationship with a woman and your career trajectory looks promising, don't expect her to stick around if you change your plans. If you change majors from business to music, your potential income just dropped, and she's probably going to go find another business major. That said, if you end up becoming a rock star down the road, then she'll probably be looking you up. Some of this may be controversial, but it seems to me that Briffault was onto something. Analyzing female behavior is always difficult, to say the least, but Briffault's law gives us one possible explanation for why women behave the way they do. Just consider it another tool for your MGTOW toolbox. Or reject it, your choice. Part of what prompted me to repost this is that Big John at the Society for Men's Freedom recently put out a video called The Pouting Princess. In the video, he pointed out all of the things that men provided for women to make their lives easier in the post-industrial age, and made the connection that it was these very things that fostered feminism, at least in part because the inventions of men gave women more free time. And at first, they were very happy about this. But now, all of those things are taken for granted. My reaction to the video was that this is Briffault's law at the macro level. Women, as a group, really have forgotten everything men have done for them, which is in accordance with Corollary 1. They seem to be thinking, yeah, men invented washing machines and microwaves, but that was a long time ago. What have we done for them lately? Well, smartphones, breast cancer research, online banking, to name a few. But I have a better question. What have women done for men lately? Both collectively and individually. Or maybe a better question would be, what have women done for the human race lately? For society? I'm drawing a blank. All I can think is they give birth, but even then, their subsequent performance as mothers often negates that. But that's all I could come up with. If you have any examples of women making the world a better place lately, by all means post it in the comments. And by that I mean making the world a better place for everyone, men and children included. So, Maslow tells us that ideally we'll reach a state of self-actualization if all goes well. But Briffault's law tells us that women will prevent this if we ignore their true nature. At least, that's pretty much how I see it. I'm no expert in any of this theory, but I've seen a lot of anecdotal evidence that men are simply better off long-term when they limit women's influence in their lives. More importantly, I've seen that in my own life. Your mileage may vary. Thank you once again for listening, and have a great day.